In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a straight cut jig for your jigsaw, like this. The way I constructed this, I basically took a piece of plywood. This is 3/4 inch plywood, and this was a bit wide in the beginning before it was cut down. I then, on the top edge, basically took 2 narrow pieces of plywood as well, which were cut on the table saw. This is about 1 inch wide. I then attached the one end to the edge of the board at the bottom, and I attached it with glue and with a bunch of screws, of wood screws. I then took the base or the sole of the jigsaw or figure saw, and I put it against this guide that I just put on the side here, attached it. I marked the other side, as well as in the middle, and as well as on the other side. So basically I then had the width of the sole throughout the length of this piece of wood at the bottom. On the other side of that, I then attached the other piece of guide wood with also wood glue and a bunch of wood screws on the other side. And what this then does is creates a perfectly parallel guide for your jigsaw throughout the length of this wood. Now, in the end, I left a gap. It's about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. I attached another piece of this guide. This is a stop and a start of the 2 edges of the board for the jigsaw, so it doesn't run over by accident. And I attached that with a screw and some glue as well. Thereafter, in the middle of the bottom board, I basically drilled a bunch of holes with a circular saw like this. And basically what I did is thereafter took the jigsaw, put it in, clamped this to my workbench, and then cut a straight line through the length of this board. This is then a perfectly straight line jig for the jigsaw to cut any board or plank. I thereafter took the pieces of wood that I cut out. I took 2 of them, and I knocked a T-bolt in from the bottom. This is for a purpose I'll show you in a moment. And then when that was done, I put this one aside for the moment. I then took another piece of plywood board like this, and I basically turned it around at first like this. And what I did was had a space for this to be attached, the top guide to be attached to the board. Now at first what I did is I only clamped it together, the edges of the boards together and level. I clamped this to the side, or I clamped it together. I drilled a hole in this little gap that I left at the end, one on each end. I then put an M10 bolt from the bottom, and then from the top I can merely take a washer to protect the wood a bit with the T-nut at the bottom, and this is a knob to keep the 2 ends of the wood basically down and clamped together. This is then solid together, flush and level. Now this done on each end will keep whatever piece of material you're working on clamped in between like this, so that you can cut a straight line. Now the way I inserted those M10 bolts from the bottom is I drilled the hole obviously, and then I punched a hexagon or 6-sided hole in the wood with a little tool that I made myself. Now if you would like to see more about this thing, let me know in the comments below and I'll explain it, or I'll show you how I made this. And this caused the head of the M10 bolt at the bottom to be sunken and be flush with the bottom of this piece of wood so it doesn't stick out. I then used an epoxy glue to glue that in place. Now with this thing glued or held in place like this, you can simply drill a hole there for the blade of the jigsaw to fit through, and thereafter you can take your jigsaw and cut a line in the bottom plank as well, which is parallel or straight in line with the line cut in the top guide, and this will then not be a problem. This will work perfectly every time you want to cut something. Now thereafter I took another piece of wood like this over here. I basically clamped it down on the bottom board, and I drilled a hole through the one end, through this one and the bottom board, and I put another T-nut in the bottom board like this, so that I could use a bolt knob like this one. Now if you want to know or want to see how I made this, check the video in the description below as well. I'll show you how to make one of these yourself. And this is then just there to bolt this down so that it can rotate. In the other end I made a 1/4 circle groove with my jigsaw, and then I only put a bolt from the bottom, and once again a piece of circular saw cutout wood with a T-nut from the bottom, so that you can cut this out and clamp it at a desired angle. the line that I've made on the board here is at a 45-degree angle, so I'm going to clamp that down. And then we're going to now clamp or press a piece of wood in between like this, and we attach this on both ends like so, and on the other end as well. And we're going to cut this thing at the 45-degree angle, and we're going to see how accurately it works, or how accurately it cuts. Now, the way I usually attach this whole jig to my workbench is not on the workbench like this, because the blade of the jigsaw might actually hit your workbench and damage the blade, your tool, and your workbench. So what I did is I turned this around, and with this open edge, I clamp it with this line just off the side of the workbench, so I can easily cut with the jigsaw without damaging the bench or the tool. So quickly let me cut this 45-degree angle, and we'll see how accurate it is. As you can see, I've now taken this adjuster, I've set it at a 45-degree angle with comparison to the jig over here, and I've clamped a normal piece of pallet wood into it, and we're going to cut it at a 45-degree angle to see how well this works. Taking the jigsaw, putting it in the jig like this, and I'm just going to fast forward this a bit because it's a bit noisy. Well, that was it. Now simply undoing the two knobs at the end that's holding it down, one on this side, one on the other side, and then taking this out from the two ends, turning it around so we can compare the corners. And then, as you can see, if we hold this together like so, it looks very 90 degrees. We're going to hold it together, and look at that, a very perfect 90-degree angle with no trouble whatsoever immediately. And what's nice about this whole setup is you can simply loosen the knob, adjust this to any angle that you wish to cut the wood into, and you can simply take your jigsaw and cut at that angle.